Alrighty, what's going on, you guys? Welcome to my PC building video. I've got a special one here for you. This is the most powerful build I've ever made. It's a 1440p ultra gaming PC rocking an RTX 3080 and a Ryzen 7700X. After taking some inspiration from this guy on YouTube with a coincidentally similar name to mine, I had to sink my teeth into the budget aspect of this build. I was able to take a PC that originally cost about $2150, and I was able to bring the price down to $1250, saving me a whopping $900. These are all the parts that I'm using. I've got 32 gigs of RAM, a 1000-watt power supply, 2 terabytes of Gen 4 SSD, and a B650 motherboard. That there on the desk is the O11D PC case, as well as the RTX 3080, the EVGA for the Win 3 version. Here's the unboxing of the B650 Gaming X V2. It's about a $190 motherboard, and I also got a 2-year warranty on it in case I brick it during a BIOS update. It's a pretty nice AM5 motherboard. It's full ATX with 3 M2 slots. It comes with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and it can really handle any combo of parts that you throw at it. The CPU that I'm using is, of course, the Ryzen 7 7700X, which is a beautiful CPU falling towards the higher end of the mid-range category. It was roughly $290. I gave the CPU a good wiggle to make sure it was seated correctly, and then proceeded to lay the latch down, which, exactly like you've heard before, took an uncomfortable amount of pressure, especially compared to AM4. And you gotta make sure that you save the black plastic latch cover, because apparently that's tied to the warranty, or so I've heard from Linus Tech Tips. This motherboard came with not one, but 2 SSD heatsinks, so I was super happy about that. And the SSD that we're using is the MSI Spatium 461, which is a 2 terabyte Gen 4 SSD with a read speed of 5000 megabits per second and a write speed of 4400 megabits per second, making it a great option for this price point and performance of the build. Up next, we have our RAM, which is 32 gigabytes of G.Skill FlareX DDR5 at 6000 megahertz, coming out to about $100. And listen in for the clicks. Make sure you line those up in channels 2 and 4 because apparently that allows for faster bandwidth and performance. Alrighty, we're right about done with the motherboard. All we have is the CPU cooler, which is the DarkRock Pro 4 with a 250 watt TDP. This cooler is a bit older, but is still capable of handling the CPUs like the 7700X considerably well. This is also the first point of major budgeting, as the DarkRock Pro 4 is a $165 cooler, which I was able to get for just $30. This is also very repeatable, as many of these coolers look to go for a similar price on eBay as well as Facebook Marketplace especially. I generally think an air cooler is a great place to save money because as long as you keep it clean or replace the fans, it won't lose any of its performance over any period of time. The DarkRock Pro 4 was originally an AM4 CPU cooler, but one thing that I've learned that was really critical here is that all AM4 CPU coolers work on AM5. They use the exact same spacing and mounting hardware. The only difference really is the backplate on the motherboard, but that doesn't really make any difference for how the cooler is installed. The DarkRock Pro 4 is a beefy CPU cooler with a towering 6.5-inch height. So when you're considering this product, make sure your case supports its size because it is absolutely massive, just like Ninja's low taper fade meme. This right here is what my setup is looking like. It's quite a bit for my little room, but I digress. The finishing touches on the motherboard, we're plugging in the CPU cooler fans into the motherboard fan headers, and we are good to move on to setting up the case. Since the PC case had no fan or LED hub, I troubled myself to daisy chain the fans together and plug them into my motherboard system fan and LED headers. There's 2 fan headers overall, so I had to daisy chain 3 fans, which is an acceptable amount, but I highly recommend just getting a fan hub instead. It's SATA powered, so you don't have to worry about plugging it into the motherboard, and the RGB can be customized much more easily. Daisy chaining is a fairly simple process, but it can get really confusing with the overwhelming amount of cables you have to deal with. I did manage to set everything up successfully though, so if there's any notes to be taken, this footage is reliable work. Moving on to our power supply, we're using the NZXT C1000 watt Gold. This one's great because it has 2 CPU connectors for the motherboard and 3 PCIe connectors for our beastly GPU. It also comes with the 16-pin connector for the high-end NVIDIA GPU models like the 4090, which is a wonderful future-proofing aspect. I highly recommend this PSU. It was roughly $180 at Micro Center, but you can get it for about $144 now. After getting the PSU into the case, we're now moving on to the PSU cables, and we're already thinking about cable management here as we plug these into the PSU. There's 6 main cables that we're actually using for the build for now. It's 2 for the CPU, 3 for the GPU, and 1 for the motherboard. We can then fish the cables through the openings closest to the areas they will be powering, and once they're all in place, we can then throw in our motherboard and plug everything up. The motherboard had an 8-pin and a 4-pin connection for the CPU. This has been the standard for most newer boards, some even requiring 2 8-pin connections. I usually plug the cable in before screwing the motherboard into the case because it can be really difficult to reach this port specifically. Then we plug in our 24-pin motherboard connector, as well as the USB 3.0, the USB-C, and after those connections, we screw in a few bolts to secure the motherboard in place. We revisit the PC case fan connectors from before and plug those into the motherboard as well. There was a connection site for those PC fans at the top right of the motherboard, as well as the middle right, as well as the bottom left for the final LED connector. Had to fish that through the back of the case to get it to the right position, and once we were able to do that, we were able to plug that up really nicely as well. And once we get that LED plugged in, we can move on to the HD audio connection, as well as the system panel connector, which includes the HDD activity LED, the reset switch, and the power switch. And this right here is the HD audio connection that I just stated. And of course, the final piece to this puzzle, we've got the GeForce RTX 3080, the For the Win 3 Ultra from EVGA. Super excited about this. This is the most powerful graphics card I've ever held with my own 2 hands. And yeah, you can see that there's 3 PCIe inputs for it because it's such a massive card. This was by far the biggest money saver in the entire build. I was able to get this graphics card for just $370 off of Facebook Marketplace. Obviously, this is not as repeatable as the other things that I was able to get used. But if you look closely on Facebook Marketplace, you can get a GPU this powerful for close to the price of $400, such as a 3070 Ti, a 3070, or an RX 6800. Nevertheless, on price, it's time to test and see if we can bring this newly built PC to life. And after powering it on, I was ecstatic to find that everything was working as intended. The PC fans and their lights were working, the CPU cooler was alive, the motherboard booted into BIOS, and I could never have been happier with another successful build. Until I remembered that I'm never lucky enough to have everything work out for me. I realized that the PC case was way too small for my build. So the immediate answer was to replace the CPU cooler, but the case was way too small for my GPU as well, since the For the Win 3 Ultra is a huge graphics card. I can't tell you how sad this moment was for me, until I realized that my seat was actually an extended ATX PC case, the Asus GT501 with a bay depth of almost 8 inches. I was really lucky to have this PC case lying around. It was one that I bought a week earlier off of Facebook Marketplace as well for $50, and luckily it came in clutch. So moral of the story, there's always so many things to consider when you're PC building. Always make sure that your build actually fits the dimensions of your case, because that was a rookie mistake. I've been told about it before, but I just didn't think it would happen to me, but here we are. So while I was waiting for Windows 11 to download on my USB flash drive, I basically just got straight to work and migrated everything from this PC case into the GT501. Luckily, this PC case actually has a fan hub. It's the Corsair Commander, which is a really nice one, so that makes things a lot easier. No daisy chaining the PC case fans, and everything is powered by the SATA connector on the PSU. I really went crazy during this transfer and got everything done in about 10 to 15 minutes because I was just completely finished for the day with PC building and I just wanted this done and behind me. The PC case is the 3rd used item in the build, serving as another major money saver. The GT501 is a $165 PC case, and I was able to get it for just $50 off of Facebook Marketplace. It also came with an extra fan and the Corsair Commander, which usually doesn't come with the case. That would technically be another $70 worth of value, but since this is obviously not repeatable and not really necessary, I didn't really count that towards the build. But the Corsair Commander is great because all you need to do is connect its USB 2.0 cable to the bottom of the motherboard, and then that gives you full control of the fans and the RGB. So I finally found myself back to where I was before. I downloaded Windows, bypassed the Wi-Fi setup. I used a USB stick to install the Wi-Fi drivers, and then downloaded all the other motherboard drivers off the net. I, of course, started with a quick BIOS update and activated XMP for the RAM. After the NVIDIA drivers were in, my 1440p resolution was correctly displayed, and everything was just right after a fairly lengthy and frustrating building process. After the rounds and rounds of Windows updates, my PC was finally ready for some benchmarks, which I was really excited to do. By the way, you can get Windows 11 using a third-party source like Digital Chillmart. They sell real Windows keys that work, and you can activate Windows 11 using a Windows 10 key, so don't waste your money on a Windows 11 key. I did a quick undervolt to better control those AM5 temps, which is generally a good idea because it helps improve the health and longevity of the CPU without losing any noticeable performance. And with that, I ran 3D Benchmark, which is a really good benchmarking software to test your graphics card. Since I was recording the benchmark the first time using my GPU's encoder, I lost a good bit of performance, but still got some solid numbers. Around 4200 is what you can expect if you record your gameplay, and around 4500 is what you can expect without recording the gameplay. Not much of a difference, but with less graphically demanding games that don't push the GPU to the max, you can expect almost no difference whatsoever. The average for these parts, by the way, is 4434, so this PC actually performs better than average for its parts. Next up is the Black Myth Wukong benchmark tool, where I got 50 FPS, which is 6 more FPS compared to Tom's Hardware's benchmark using the 3080 at the exact same settings. And then, of course, we have Cyberpunk, where I got about 80 FPS on ray tracing medium, 95 FPS on ultra settings, and then the built-in benchmark, I got about 92 FPS and 104 FPS without recording. Similarly, with ray tracing ultra, I reached 71 FPS and then 77 FPS without recording. Comparing my results again to Tom's Hardware, I was able to get 7 more FPS on ray tracing ultra and almost 30 more FPS on regular ultra. So yeah, as you can imagine, I was very happy with the build in the end. The PC performed better than the averages for its parts. The temps were stable during long gaming sessions with a smooth frame rate. I was able to play my favorite game in 1440p ultra settings with plenty of usage left over from my GPU. The temps did, however, cap out at about 84 degrees, but according to NVIDIA's website, the upper limit of the temps are about 90 degrees Celsius before it begins to thermal throttle. Using the EVGA software Precision X1, you can adjust the fan curve to reach lower temps, but for now I'm not too worried about it. I did, however, download the Corsair IQ software to adjust my RGB on my case as a finishing touch. Out of all the options, I went ahead with this solid green color because it matched the default color on the GPU, giving the whole build a ghostly green glow. And that's the end of the beginning of my 1440p Ultra build. Thanks for sticking around or even clicking on my video at all. I'm still new to PC building and content creation, so hopefully I get the hang of it someday and make some more interesting content. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.